Welcome to the College Investor Audio Show, where today we take a look at robots. Well, specifically, which AI tool gives the best student loan recommendations? This is fun. Let's take a look. All right, so when families are weighing their options for paying for college, the question, what's the best student loan, seems pretty straightforward. But, as we learned after asking 5 leading AI models, ChatGPT, Grok, Perplexity, Copilot, and Google Gemini, the answers can be incomplete, sometimes unclear, and occasionally misleading. Each tool did offer a broad framework. Start with student or federal loans, then consider private loans if you have to. Yet critical details were often missing here. In some cases, explanations just failed to note that direct subsidized loans required demonstrated financial need. None of them clearly spelled out federal borrowing limits, an omission that could leave families unprepared if federal aid runs short, right? Or even specific scenarios or borrowing order, such as borrow the student's direct loan first, then supplement with private or Parent Plus loans if you need to. Last year, by the way, we discovered that Google's AI was getting financial answers incorrect 43% of the time. Doesn't look good for the robots. But when it comes to student loan recommendations, the results were a little bit better. There are still some key misses, though, in areas where policies change, interest rates vary, borrower protections shift frequently. It's crazy. So let's take a look. Here's what we asked and how the models responded. The question we posed to every model was simple. What is the best student loan? We wanted to see whether the tools could guide a prospective borrower toward the most cost-effective and smartest choice while covering the full range of relevant considerations. And the results were mixed, as you would expect. We gave each answer a rating, good, average, and poor, based on what it got right, what it got wrong or missed, and if the answer had any errors in it. Starting with ChatGPT. ChatGPT gave a broad overview, identifying federal direct subsidized loans as the starting point and then mentioning options like direct unsubsidized, plus and private loans from lenders like College Ave, Ascent, Sallie Mae, SoFi, and Empower. It offered lender recommendations by borrower type, but didn't even explain the need requirement for subsidized loans or outline borrowing limits, GRR, and the different situations piece, all mapped to private lenders. Our rating, average. What it got right, federal student loans are first and the best starting point. Here's what it missed. It didn't share that direct subsidized loans require a financial need. It didn't even share that unsubsidized have a low cap. It doesn't mention the changes to plus loans at all. And it doesn't reference Parent Plus or Grad Plus. It doesn't distinguish between undergrad and graduate school either. Factual errors, there were not really any factual errors, but it ends with just ask. Who am I supposed to ask? You? You can see the complete answer at thecollegeinvestor.com right inside this article, and the complete answer to all 5 of these tools as well. Next up, Perplexity. Perplexity provided a more detailed explanation of federal loan types and interest rates, along with a breakdown of private lender strengths. It noted that federal loans generally have lower rates and more protections, but it still missed a direct acknowledgement of the need requirement for subsidized loans. So the rating here we gave it is poor. It did get that right, that federal student loans are the best option for most students, but it missed quite a bit. It doesn't share that subsidized loans require a need, demonstrable financial need. It also doesn't provide any real order of operations or guide for families at all. It just kind of jumps from direct subsidized loans to private loans. That's not good. There were some factual errors too. The federal direct subsidized loan interest rate is 6.39%, not 3.3 or 3.73% that it mentions. That's kind of a big deal. Parent Plus and Grad Plus loans are 8.94%, not 6.28%, guys. Let's move on to Grok. Grok did a lot of reasoning. It had a huge output, but we liked that it gave a final answer. That answer was actually generally correct, even giving an order of operations for families to consider. It touched on strategy, such as using a cosigner to get better rates, but it left out any discussion of loan caps or when the order of operations would come into play. The rating, though, here is good. It got right that federal student loans are the best option. It got a decent order of operations, too. It missed, though, that it only recommends two private lenders, SoFi and Sallie Mae, and doesn't really elaborate why only two. There were no factual errors for this guy. All right, let's move on to Copilot. Copilot started their output with top options. That was basically a private student loan lender table. Only then does it go back to explore federal options. It followed it up by an unrelated section about the new Repayment Assistance Plan, RAP, launching in 2026, but that's not even a relevant answer to the question at all. So the rating here is, you guessed it, poor. What it got right, though, it did get the details about federal loan programs correct. What it missed? It led to private student loans. It didn't mention when you should consider which type of loan, and it provided a section about a student loan repayment plan that doesn't even go into effect yet. Factual errors? None. But the output was awful. Moving on to Gemini. So Google Gemini delivered the most organized answer, actually. And even though it hedged itself on loan choices being personal, it still highlighted that federal student loans should be considered first. It correctly defined direct subsidized loans as need-based and highlighted key benefits like fixed rates, income-driven repayment, and student loan forgiveness programs. Pretty cool. Still, it didn't mention federal borrowing caps, GER, which can be a deciding factor in whether private loans are even necessary. The rating, though, overall was good. It did get right that it provided a good rule about using federal student loans first before private loans. What it missed didn't highlight the loan caps on federal loans or the potential upcoming changes to federal student loan options that might make private loans more attractive. Factual errors? None. That's good. So what is the correct answer? All 5 models agreed. Federal loans should be the first stop for most students, and for good reason. They offer fixed interest rates, income-driven repayment plans, deferment, forbearance, and potential forgiveness. Within that category, though, direct subsidized loans are generally the most borrower-friendly because the government pays the interest while the student's in school, at least half-time and during certain deferment periods. But they are only available to undergrads with demonstrated financial need. That distinction really matters here, by the way. A student who assumes they'll qualify for the subsidized loan without applying for federal aid could be caught off guard here when the offer doesn't arrive. Likewise, the absence of any mention of annual and aggregate loan limits leaves families unaware that even if they qualify for federal loans, they might still face a gap in their financing plan. Anyway, for undergraduates, the correct answer every single time is this: borrow the direct student loan first, whether subsidized or unsubsidized, up to the loan limit. Then look at either Parent Plus or maybe private student loans. The Parent Plus versus private student loan debate is very nuanced, by the way, and the battle is shifting more towards private loans, believe it or not, after the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, say that 10 times fast, was signed. So where do student or private student loans fit in here? Once federal options are exhausted, private loans might be necessary to close the gap between aid and the total cost of attendance. So this is where the AI models diverged most in their recommendations. It's kind of fun to see. Some focused on specific lenders, pulling generic quotes from their marketing campaigns. College Ave for fast approval and flexible terms. Ascent for students without a cosigner. Sallie Mae for specialized programs like law or med school. SoFi for borrower perks like career coaching. Empower Financing for international students without U.S. credit history. AI robots are good with commercials. Others gave general tips like comparing APRs, checking for fees, choosing between fixed and variable interest rates, but none of them mentioned that interest rates for private loans can vary widely, from under 3% for well-qualified borrowers to double digits for people with weaker credit, or that repayment options are typically less flexible than federal programs. Some mentioned the lack of forgiveness programs, but all the AI options were basically scraping best private student loan lists, which was kind of annoying to us. All right, so what about upcoming policy changes? Several models briefly referenced upcoming federal loan changes, like the phase out of the SAVE repayment plan and, of course, the new RAP plan. One briefly mentioned how these changes could push more borrowers toward private loans, but couldn't tell you why. It was also obvious that the models couldn't distinguish between Parent Plus loans, which continue forward with new caps, and Grad Plus, which are being eliminated altogether. Finally, while most highlighted deferment and forbearance as options, none of them discussed the big changes coming with deferment and forbearance programs. The bottom line on AI student loan recommendations. Okay, here we go. Yeah, AI models can deliver a quick overview. They are not a substitute for a complete student loan strategy, though. All 5 tools correctly identified federal loans as the safest starting point. There are key omissions, though, from borrowing limits to eligibility requirements that could lead a family to overestimate how much federal financial aid will cover, or even misunderstand when private loans become necessary. A borrower who used AI advice as their sole resource might end up with an incomplete plan, particularly if they didn't cross-check the details with the federal student aid website or a financial aid officer. As with most AI-generated content, the information is only as good as the prompt, the model's training, which we all know is just what websites they stole their content from and when it was last checked, and the user's ability to fact-check themselves. But that last part is kind of hard, too. If a user doesn't have knowledge of a subject, it becomes increasingly difficult to do the fact-checking, right? So at the end of the day, borrowers looking for student loans should focus on tools and experts and brands that have deep knowledge in the space and are known experts, not merely AI tools. They can help get the ball rolling, but it's not the end-all be-all. If you want a really good, trusted source, by the way, thecollegeinvestor.com is where you can go. We have tips on everything about student loans, how to pay them back, how to get them, where to go, who to talk to, all of it, all the links you could possibly ever need, and more and more and more. Again, it's thecollegeinvestor.com. Thanks so much for stopping by to the podcast today, and we'll talk to you again real soon.